what I would tell the general population is it's extremely cutthroat. Everyone's looking for a piece of the pie that's very, very finite.
So leading up to the NFL draft, like what is your life like this time of year?
NFL teams are constantly asking me for medical records. They're asking me for intelligence examinations. They're inviting my guys to private workouts. I'm getting teams information they need about my guys. Teams are trying to do a little cloak and dagger, find out about what other teams think about my guys. And so there's a little bit of narrative building and cloak and dagger of my own on my end.
So when you mean cloak and dagger, I kind of know what you mean, but I also not entirely sure what you mean.
The NFL is a very copycat league. So if one team's interested in a guy, they don't want other people to know that because other teams will jump in and it becomes harder and more expensive in terms of cash and capital to get that player. So if you're a team that really likes a guy, you don't necessarily want to tell his agent that, and you definitely don't want the player to necessarily know that at this juncture because the agent will have the opportunity to tell every other team, hey, do you know what player XYZ? No, I don't. Well, the Patriots really like this guy. Really? So the agent creating these narratives of other teams liking your guy increases his overall value in the market.
What's your phone bill like? Like how much are you on your phone every single day?
A lot. You probably just heard a phone call that I just got from a team. I was on the phone with the Denver Broncos about 10 minutes before this call. I'm on the phone hours and hours every day. During the draft, one year I took like 450 phone calls within like a 5-hour span. And some of the calls come in so rapidly you can't even answer. Maybe you've represented 5 or 6 guys in the draft and they're kind of right there on the bubble of getting drafted or not. Every team's calling you with multiple people trying to get a deal done and trying to gauge interest at the exact same time. And so it's kind of a real skill set to manage that many phone calls.
Will there be times where you have clients or other agents have clients that like, look, they were going to go to the Broncos, but the Colts called first and I couldn't answer the Broncos phone call, so now you're going here.
Yeah, you got to know your own player's stock. If you don't think that a team's going to wait, or you don't think another team's going to call, you got to have that kind of savoir-faire to know when to take a deal, when to keep rolling, and a second by second kind of deal. So yeah, it's pretty crazy.
If we kind of backed up a little bit, when you look at kind of the technical definition of what an NFL agent does, what's kind of the job description?
Master of a lot of different trades. We're psychologists, we're savants, we're draft analysts, we're contract negotiators. But at the end of the day, you're hiring somebody that knows the NFL business very, very well. It's going to fight for you to get into the NFL at the highest place possible, to stay in the NFL as long as you can, and to negotiate the most money that you can, both on and off the field. Those are kind of what I call the macro jobs. But the things that I get called to do, I went to law school, as you can see. I get called into doing all kinds of legal things, business-oriented things, personal things. I get invited to guys' weddings. Guys get divorced, I get involved. I get 3 a.m. calls. I'm the first go-to for just about anything under the sun. And I got to be prepared and have a Rolodex, if you want to use the old school term, ready for just about anything.
How do you get into it? Or most agents have a law background?
Most agents do. Not all, you don't have to, but understanding contracts really well is something you're going to need to do. To sit for the NFLPA agent exam, you have to have at least a master's degree. Again, most have law degrees, and you have to take a test. And to even sit for the test, you have to pass an extensive FBI background check. You got to pay thousands of dollars, and only about 40% or less of the guys that sit for the exam, and bear in mind these are people that have master's degrees, if not practicing attorneys, actually go on to become agents. So it's pretty hard. It's not easy.
Do you really need to know very much about football?
Football business is much more important than football. There's a lot of people that get into this business or try to get into this business that are really good at X's of football and do not succeed. And so it's really an idea that you really want to be really, really understanding and having great relationships with NFL teams. And if you don't, it's hard. And so if you don't really understand the football business and there's no real degree you can get to get into the football business, it's going to be really difficult to succeed. It's really expensive too, because when you take on rookie clients, they're choosing to be represented by one person or one firm, but there may be dozens or more courting them. And there's significant financial money put in to representing a player. When you sign a player in December, you take care of him financially to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars. And you only make a portion of his contract. And so if he doesn't make it, you just lost 5 figures. And so a big part of the business is, think of it like private equity or venture capital. You are assessing players as to what their value over the course and scope of multiple years in the future may be, and making investments in players based on that. If you think a player's a great college player, but the NFL is not going to have a lot of interest in him, you don't invest in him. So a lot of what I do is valuations of the marketability, the potential of of college players going to the pros.
But can somebody make it without one?
It's rare. I would say it's possible. You're probably leaving money on the table, meaning a skilled agent would probably get you more than you can get yourself. And it really only quote unquote works for, and again, that's very, one could argue either way, works out for players that are going to be superstars no matter what. The players that have done it have been pretty intelligent or just marquee talents that would be, great talents. And the reason a lot of times they're going without an agent is they don't want to pay the agent fee, which is, 2-3% of their salary, and they're trying to get around that and not pay one. To be honest with you, I disagree with that, and an agent should be able to pay for his own value and with what he brings to the table.
Is everybody going for everybody, or is it just a lot of competition for those really big names and then everything kind of filters out down the line?
I wish it was the latter. It's probably more the former. Now, to get a first-round draft pick, which commission-wise is going to yield millions of dollars, hopefully over the course and scope, the competition's brutal. You may see agents spending over $1 million to acquire a high-end first-round talent because of the potential commissions that could be had doing that. And you're facing the behemoth agencies out there. But it's very competitive in the mid and late rounds too. You have agents spending 50, 60, 70 grand sometimes on mid-round talent. And then undrafted, it's even competitive on a different level. So it's competitive just differently across the entire draft board to work with talent. And you really got to segment yourself. And it's very fierce. It's crazy what people will do, what will offer. The other problem is there's really, about 700-800 agents, and about 100 or so are what I call legit, consistently negotiating second and third contracts, profitable, which means a lot of agents don't have a lot of clients, and they're trying to, get into this business or be more in this business than they are. And so they're trying to do anything they can, even way out of market, entice a player to sign with them. And so you get players going with agents that, maybe the agent's not that great, but he's offering them a crazy package. It's way out of the realm. And you have to make a decision as a more tenured agent. Do I jump in financially into a field where it's unlikely the guy's going to be marketable, but I want him? There's a lot of push and pull on that.
Is there a certain kind of player that you would say that you kind of specialize in?
So I've had a lot of success. I represent the highest paid long snapper in NFL history. That's Luke Rhodes for the Colts. That's one of my guys. He was an undrafted linebacker that converted while he was playing in the NFL to be a long snapper. I represent a lot of guys that have gone, in the mid rounds to late rounds, but even undrafted guys that have gone into second contracts. I negotiated 3-second deals this year alone for undrafted players, which is pretty wild. One of them was his third contract. So these are guys that not only made it into the league undrafted, but got 3-4 years down the road to a second contract, and one of those cases beyond that to a third contract. That's very rare. And so a lot of the guys that I've had have been kind of under the radar guys that I've seen enough to where I've invested something in them and helped them really navigate unlikely waters to get where they're at now.
When you go into the kind of negotiations with a team, are they usually pretty far apart, or is it usually kind of pretty close, right? Like, let's say, just for example, you want 1.1, they want to pay 1.
Teams will lowball you, but sometimes they're not lowballing you. That's the market. And then if you try to go somewhere else and get something, it'll be the same or worse. And that's a huge amount of humble pie. So what I would say is, to answer your question, is teams are always going to try to get you lower than your value. It's very rare that a team offers over your value. But knowing whatever offer comes in, if it's at, below, or under market, is a skill that takes time and takes a lot of savoir-faire, and getting your client to be on board with that is another skill set in and of itself.
I don't know if this is going to be an accurate assessment or a terrible assessment, but for some reason it reminds me of the housing market. Like, everything is different at every single time, and is this, is this that, is this? Is that a terrible analogy, or kind of like,
No, it actually came up this year. I have a client whose father is a well-known real estate agent, and he was giving me some advice. Like, Evan, he's like, I don't understand how you do what you do. You're I was like, I have to deal with, real estate assets that are moving month to month, week to week, year to year. You are literally having to recalibrate and understand the market for a very unique asset, your client, my son, by the hour.
Do the guys coming into it, are they prepared at all for it?
Business wise, generally not. Mentally, generally not. It's rare that you have a guy that has the kind of acumen needed, and that's a lot of what you're doing is mentorship. I spend a lot of time on the phone and on calls, like preparing guys for the business of the NFL. They're used to scholarships where teams are going to be very reluctant to let them kick them off the team. That's not the case in the NFL. They're looking at their rosters every week and making changes and cutting guys. And that's just not a cutthroat world that they're used to. And so tipping them off on, hey, you need to act, do this, this, and this to give you the best chance to make the team is tough. A lot of these guys were the total studs, not only of their team, but of their conference. And that doesn't mean anything at the next level. They're just, the competition is so high that if you were a stud in college, cool, so is everybody. You got to be a stud here, or we don't care what you did, and you're gone. And that mindset shift, going from being the star to the walk-on again, is hard for guys.
How do they handle the money? Because I could just imagine like 22-year-old me, like you're going to, with that much money?
Well, first you have to make it. A lot of the contracts don't have guaranteed money, and they see that what they're signing for, and they think they have that money when they don't. They've got to actually make the team and earn the money. So that's the first obstacle. The second is having a really good plan in place, having a good financial advisor. There's a whole separate genre of people that are, certified with the NFL Players Association as financial advisors to put guys on a budget, help them with investments. And a lot of what I do, I actually just doing this today too, is connecting guys with financial advisors. I'm making sure they've got a plan in place to take care of their money. They've got a plan in place to manage their assets, not blow all their money. My job is to kind of be like, look, you need something in place. I'm the legal managerial part of this. I'm not the money guy. Here are people that can handle that. Let me set up meetings for you. You make the decisions who you want to go with, but these are reputable people. You make the decision, but you got to have something in place.
We have a lot of listeners, some questions that kind of cover a lot of stuff, but I wanted to ask you, like, what do you like about it ultimately?
I think for me is a huge mental challenge. This is, if you're successful and you're profitable as an agent, it's very rare. People don't understand that there are hundreds and hundreds of people that went to law school, were successful attorneys that are not successful in this business. I like the mental challenge. It's really rewarding. And I like helping young men become bigger than they can be and become better than they can be on their own. That's really, really cool. And last but not least, it's very rewarding to take a guy that maybe went undrafted and get him to a second contract. It happens very rarely. It takes a great partnership between agent and player, but when it happens, it's a wonderful, very, very high thing, is the best way to say.
How has NIL changed this process?
It's changed the mentality of players a little bit. No, not 100%, but a little bit. I felt before they viewed an agent as a partner, as someone who gave them great advice. But players more and more are seeing agents just as piggy banks and just as someone to write them a check, because that's a lot of how they're seeing colleges now, is just someone to write them a check. And so I try to stay away from players that are heavy NIL people, because it's likely that they're not willing to look at me as a real asset. They're just looking at as for a payday from me.
Is the opposite the reverse, in that some agents look at players as just paydays?
Of course, it's very, very true. I think most players think that agents have huge amounts of money. And it is true that a lot of people get into this business that were very successful as investors, business owners, attorneys, and have millions to play with. And so players tend to, view them that way. But when that's really, for the majority of agents, not the case. These guys are trying to make money, and make a living and pay their mortgages. And, they've got to be pretty cutthroat as well. So the entire pro football world, whether you're an agent, whether you're a player, whether you're a team, what I would tell the general population is it's extremely cutthroat. It's extremely cutthroat. Everyone's looking for a piece of the pie that's very, very finite.
Can it be a dirty business?
Very much so. Very, very much so. There's all kinds of under the table deals, and you've got to make a decision as an agent if that's how you want to conduct your business. There are ramifications, both positive and negative, from that. Or if you want to abstain from that completely and run a cleaner business, or you put yourself at a disadvantage, an advantage, whatever it may be. Different agents come to different conclusions on this, but yes, it can be extremely dirty.
Slightly lighter question. Most interesting demand a player or team has ever had?
I get think of it from a workers' comp perspective. When a team wants to bring on a player, they conduct a physical, and they look at every inch of their body and see how dinged up it is from college. And if they don't like it, they will ask you, say, hey, we'll still sign this guy and we'll take on the risk, but we're not taking on the risk of one little part of his body. And maybe it's his arm, maybe it's his leg. And the reason is because if the guy gets injured, they want to be able to cut him without any, need to pay him anything. And they'll try to start off left leg. We'll be responsible for all his injuries in terms of his care and everything except for his left leg. So there's the agent trying to negotiate it. Well, what on his left leg? Maybe it's his ankle, maybe it's his knee. And that's pretty common. But to answer your question, I mean, I've had teams try to negotiate, and I'm going to be a little G-rated here, male anatomy, as we won't take on any injury with a certain part of his male anatomy because they had a physical and he had maybe an injury at one point, and they didn't want it was wild. So early in my career, I had a negotiation over male anatomy and an injury waiver.
Not in regards to the male anatomy, but just to kind of understand, so that the team would be like, we'll cover everything except for an injury to his left leg, and they'll get that like in writing. Like,
yeah, we'll assume the risk. Meaning, if this player gets injured, he can go on IR. We'll pay him an IR amount, hundreds of thousands of dollars. But if the injury that he sustains is to this part of the body, we're able to cut him without compensating him as collectively bargained.
Wow, I did not know that.
But they have to, because think of like starting any job, and you have to disclose pre-existing conditions. It's the same thing.
Have you ever had, what's like the most interesting demand you've ever had from a player? Like, I want this much money and
I had a
two
guy,
sweatshirts, or
I had a guy that we were negotiating with. This is actually pretty recent, a couple of years ago. We had a guy, so I'll train at the training facility that you want me to train for 4 months. That's fine. But I must have a room in the housing for my cat. And I was like, you want a whole room? Just yes. He's very particular. And I was like, okay. So we negotiated that a little bit more. And our negotiation was, look, when you go to the NFL, unless you're drafted extremely high, if you tell a team that when you come to training camp or OTAs and you got a room for your cat, they are not touching you. And your stock is dropping. And you are now labeled a complete weirdo. And you are not of such a value to where teams will overlook that. There are just too many other players at your position of your same skill set and abilities that it will kill your stock. So we're going to treat you like an NFL team, and we're going to politely work with you on this, but you're not going to get on for your cat. And never say that again.
But how much does the team matter? And this is kind of in line with one of our questions, is the sense that like, okay, player X is going to make it if he goes to this team. But if he goes to this team, it's over.
Yep. So you try to find out on the front end where teams value guys. And they're all over the place. Some teams are like, we really like this guy. We draft this guy in the 3rd round. And there are some teams like, I wouldn't touch this guy with a 10-foot pole. And if he comes here, his career is going to last about 3 weeks. The reasons why vary greatly. It could be scheme, how they play their players. It could be the coaches involved. It could be the type of players different teams look for. It could be their tolerance for behaviors. It could be medical history. It could be character. It could be intelligence. They assess all these things and come up with, a little bit different grades, team by team by team.
So will you have players that you could look back and say, like, that guy should have made it, but it just didn't work out for him?
I have a guy right now. He's still playing in the NFL. He's a wide receiver. He played at a small school. And after the draft, he had one team that called, not to draft him, but to sign him. And we took it, and no other team ever called again. He's now on his 7th year in the NFL, still playing in the league. Just, if you run the numbers on a player of that caliber, of a one-offer guy, should have been done probably 3 months in and never played a down of football again. So he bucked a lot of trends, but we can attribute it to he went to the right team that saw the right value in him during the preseason, used him the right way. He stood out enough and was given enough opportunities that led to him making the team. He played with that team for a number of years. His reputation grew and grew and grew, and now he's, again, still in the NFL.
Is there really like that little difference between some of the kind of rank and file guys, so to speak?
I mean, they're totally fungible. There are guys that, quite frankly, should have no shot. They get crazy shots. Guys that should have had, a super, super giant shot to get no shot. It's crazy. But yeah, when you get down to that little thing, the slightest thing can kind of tip the scale. And so as an agent, you're really like looking like, look, How much can I actually impact this player's stock? How can I put him in the right position? How can I help make him as quickly as money that he can make right now, because he may not get that chance ever again? It's very tedious and very, very, very precarious at that level.
How much will teams kind of generally kind of go back and forth in the sense that we love this player at 1.1, but you're asking for 1.15 and absolutely not.
I got in a veteran second contract negotiation this year where we were fighting over $5,000. It was ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous how we got down. Well, we can do this, and it went back and forth over a couple of days over $5,000. But hey, I mean, you want to show your client that you're willing to do whatever. And it was important to him to get that extra $5,000. Great. The team made a hard line stop, and we got in. We had to kind of get creative with how we worded the language and how we did things. And that's another thing too, as an agent, is you got to get creative with how you do language in the contract itself to get the things that you want.
You can answer this or you skip it. How much money do you make?
Good enough to take care of myself and my family. But honestly, it varies year to year. I can have huge years where, and you got to be real careful. I had a monster year this year, made huge money, and you got to be like, I may not be so great in a year or two. So I may want to put something away. And some years it's like, holy cow, man, I didn't have a great year this year, because you just don't know. A lot of it's contingent on the health and performance of your players.
Taking quarterback out, because I feel like quarterback is the too easy of an answer. But what's the best kind of position for an agent? What's the worst kind of position for an agent?
Long snapper. Now, I represent the best in the league. So super low maintenance. And if you get one, though, they can play for like 20 plus years. And so it's like an annuity money wise. I mean, so long snapper, they don't get paid the crazy money that quarterbacks and defensive ends and offensive tackles gets paid. But Luke Rose is going to play for a long time, ladies and gentlemen. And, I can always count on making the team. And it's great negotiating every couple of years for him, because he's the best. What do you want me to you pay him the most that you can possibly offer a long snapper in the league? And every time it's the same thing. It's great.
Yeah. Is there a position that like agents are like, oh man, I would sign that guy, but he's
middle linebackers can be tough. Safeties can be tough, because teams a lot of times flop them in and out. Unless you have an elite one, if you've got kind of a barely making the team kind of guy, they're trying to replace that guy every year.
Oh, there's just too much, right? It's just injuries, and
they think they can get better. They grade their own players constantly. And like, who's the worst guy on our team internally? They'll ask these questions. Who's the worst guy at this position? How do we get rid of him? How do we move? How do we get better than him? All the time.
Do you generally, can you have any say in that, in the sense that like, hey, we're going to cut him? Like, no, can you convince him out of it?
If you get an early enough tip, and a team, you have a good relationship with the team, maybe the team will tell you at the beginning trying to get paid. Your guy's job's on the line. And then what that really means is your guy's going to get cut. You got to go to your guy and say, look, you're going to get play in training camp and probably in the preseason, but they're going to move on from you. You're going to audition for 31 teams during training camp. And by some small miracle, if you do so well, I'll convince them that they made a mistake. That's happened only a handful of times in my career. Not that I've gotten the information, but that I've gotten the information, communicated to my player, and they've risen above it.
I won't ask you to name names, but are there teams that agents try to avoid?
I think that it varies agent to agent. I get asked this question quite a bit. I will not name the team, but there are at least two teams right now that are very, very much on my naughty list. And it comes down to how they treat players when they're injured, for me at least.
Yeah, I could see that, right? Like maybe this team's not the best, but when they start kind of messing with you, like that's a little bit different.
They just try to move on from the guy and try to get out as cheap as possible. And that is wild. And I had a guy that had a severely herniated back, was, taking epidurals like a woman were about ready to have a baby. And the team was trying to get out from paying him anything.